purpose of our panel right now is to give the audience a sense for how your journeys have progressed towards success in adopting enterprise wearable technology. And the profile of adoption over the past couple of years has changed quite a bit. We've gone from the question of, can this work, to how do I make it work? How do I take it out of the lab? And now really into how does this drive value all day, every day in our business environments? Each of you has a very unique experience, very, very different operating environments. Marisol, can you kick us off? Give us a sense for where you're operating. And if you could bring up thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marisol Barrero, Ergonomics Manager for Toyota Motor North America. I essentially support 15 of our North American manufacturing facilities, and being Ergonomics Manager for the region, I support systems and tools for the prevention of musculoskeletal disorders, essentially. So those are your carpal tunnel, tendonitis, epicondylitis, lots of big names, back pain, things of that nature. My background is I'm a certified professional ergonomist, so it's a good fit with the role. My primary focus in the area of wearables has been using exoskeletons to improve team member comfort and reduce injuries. So we've been trialing them and then finally have implemented, truly call it an implementation now as compared to simply trials. We've been looking at them since 2016. So it's been an interesting road that I'm happy to share more information about.
What are you running?
My name is Rodney James. I'm a technology development manager for Duke Energy. I'm in a group called the Emerging Technologies Office. We're an R&D company, or we're an R&D part of Duke Energy, where we look at technology from a proof of concept standpoint. So we don't necessarily have a connection into operations, but we're kind of the liaison with that. So we work in solar panels, plug-in hybrid vehicles, battery storage technology, smart home appliances, and then also augmented reality, virtual reality, and also a couple other things as well. So we have actually been on an interesting journey with another coworker of mine, Alex Vukievich, in doing and looking and evaluating augmented reality smart glasses and how that can affect our company. We've been looking at it from augmenting different types of work that we do, from linemen to our wind turbine generation technicians to our folks in the warehouse and using warehouse picking. So we've looked at pretty much a proof of concept with those devices, and we're now taking a very small interim step into incorporating that into our company as a pilot program. And then hopefully in a few years, we'll look at the idea of actually becoming an operational technology.
Great. And congratulations on the fast response. The hurricane on the East Coast hit you guys straight on, and you recovered pretty quick.
Getting ready for another one, it seems.
Zach?
Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Pinner. I work at Merck, a pharmaceutical company. My primary role is to work with the different business units and to look at a variety of problems and usually connect them to an edge technology. A slice of that is related to extended reality. And if you look at the different business areas, the groups that I work with are usually in 3 different areas. So you have a commercial sector, which is looking at marketing and selling the products. You have a manufacturing area, which is developing and making the medicines, and then you have the researchers, the scientists in the labs, and they're discovering the cures. So just to give you a little glimpse into what we do with extended reality, I've put a few pictures up there, and the top 2 are related to training. So the first one up there is a training for a doctor or a surgeon who is learning how to use one of these medicines. The next one is a human resources training, so some biases and looking at things from other people's perspectives. The bottom left one there is a tour, so getting to see, since it's a global company, getting to see people in their different working environments or different divisions you don't usually get to see. And then the last one up there is really interesting. It's the scientists in their labs and using the HoloLens to work better with each other. And that's a really cool use case. We actually have another Merck employee who will be speaking here later today at 3 o'clock, William Forrest. I definitely recommend listening to that. It's a really interesting use case.
So Chris Comfort, the Innovation Technology Manager for the Nuclear Division of Southern Company. And so I see Brian put a picture of something we're very proud of, and that's a new nuclear plant. Two new nuclear plants we're building outside of Augusta, Georgia. So the role of my organization really is similar to Rodney's, and that is really to look for proof of concept, new technology, new solutions, as well as building that culture. So this is my third EWTS, and one of the things we've been working on is how do we bring wearables, specifically the RealWear HMT1, into the business? How do we put it into our operations staff at our nuclear power plants, which, by the way, is regulated even more than the FAA regulates airline industry. So not necessarily an easy task, and so we're moving along. It's been a long journey, but we're excited that we just really implemented it this month at one of our plants in a pilot phase that was very successful. So we expect to see implementation probably early next year based on that. So looking forward to talking about that with you guys.
That's great. So one of the hopes we have from the panel, obviously, is that you guys come away with some strategies or areas to engage further and understand how you can maybe accelerate your journeys, skip some of the pitfalls. We'll cover for the next 30 minutes an exploration into different sections that we believe make up the combination of factors you need to think through to have a successful adoption. And we'll save 10 minutes-ish at the end for Q&A. So if you guys have questions that you're dying to ask, if you're like really dying, just raise your hand and we'll get the question out soon. Otherwise, we'll save it for the end. So let's kick it off with, we'll call it the heavy lifting. Exoskeletons are new to EWTS, so it's an exciting new wearable. When we spoke, Marisol, one of the things that you talked about was like the KPIs that you look at to justify these use cases. It's not like how much can it lift, but you looked at it from a much more holistic perspective. Can you give us a sense like how you approached that, where the inspiration came from, and how you applied it to your business needs?
Sure. So it's funny you start with lifting. So really, we don't have very heavy lifting across Toyota. So that's a great start. So we have a lot of repetitive operations, a lot of repetitive exertion. So the key drivers for us are, again, team member comfort, team member morale, and reduction of injuries, injury avoidance, shall we say. So when I first saw this type of system or exoskeletons in 2016, and some of my other plant safety folks as well, we knew that this was something really special that could address all those items that I just noted. So again, all our plants are different. We're not cookie cutter. Everyone has different culture. So some of our plants jumped onto exoskeletons right away, getting a bunch for their facility. So early 2017, one of my plants, Indiana, got many exoskeletons to trial. So they were really on the cutting edge. So they made it voluntary for the team members to wear after selecting some processes where they felt the upper body frames, which were more robust at the time, would be the best fit. Made it voluntary, supported line side. Support is crucial when you're rolling something like this out. And just really created that wow and interaction with the team members. Now, really what happened after that, 2017 and really a first portion of 2018 was, okay, so we have this in there. Now we have to answer a lot of questions. So are these exoskeletons, are they good for team members? Right, so will people wear exoskeletons? And predominantly the answer was yes, they will wear exoskeletons. And then come the harder questions. So is there better comfort, better ratings of perceived exertion with exoskeletons? And for the most part, after doing a lot of surveys and questionnaires, the answer is yes, all around this is a better product. And then there were more questions. So now you're wearing exoskeletons, you're not using your entire arm weight and manipulation. So is this going to impact your natural strength, for example? So we had to address that. So is there going to be any impact on the team member side? Are you going to lose your strength because you're not using your body the way that you were earlier? And that brought in some medical testing of our team members at certain intervals and such to see if the strength was still the same as before they wore exoskeletons. And again, we did not see any reduction in strength. And then came even tougher questions. So what is this really going to do? Is this really going to reduce the physical risk factors? And that's when we started doing electromyography studies, and essentially that EMG, you're looking at the firing rate of the muscle, basically answering the question, how hard are they working compared to the maximum that you can do? And we now have objective data that using exoskeletons, you're working at a lower percentage of your maximum capacity. When you're working closer to your maximum capacity, as you can imagine, you have a greater chance of injury. So now, today we have objective data showing that it's better for comfort, it's less perceived exertion, there's no strength degradation, and it's also reducing the physical risk factors. We still have some outstanding questions, quite frankly. So the big one being, all right, you have all this great stuff, but so what? Is it really going to reduce injuries, right? So I think that's one that we're trying to address now. For the most part, subjectively, we're getting yes. We're seeing less injuries in the same processes where we have implemented exoskeletons, but quite frankly, there are very few long-term or longitudinal studies in the area. So those are still being, that big question, right? That's an executive level question. Why are we buying all these units? Are we not gonna see injuries? Are they going to delay the onset of injuries? What do these devices really do? So I think we have to hold out a little while and really drive that research to answer that question. But really trial, answering questions, and currently we're working on an internal standard for Toyota. We're very big into determining what is the best way to do something and then standardizing across all our facilities. So we're currently drafting our North American-wide standard for exoskeleton usage that's going to address a lot of these issues, and then just address the question, what are these things, right? We're billing them right now as personal protective equipment, or PPE, the term most of you know, because we're seeing that reduction of the physical risk factors. So it's protective against those physical risk factors.
How many folks are experimenting with exoskeletons or just starting in your field? I think you have a perfectly good resource now and Toyota's funded study to look at. That's fantastic. So switching to the different type of hardware that's really featured here. Ronnie, like you talked about how you've kept an open view of the use case at Duke, and in your intro you talked about a variety of different areas you're looking at and how the use case influences your approach to hardware when you start that journey. Have you found a process for addressing it that really works for you, that think is repeatable for other organizations?
Yeah, one of the things that we looked at when we first really started this kind of AR, VR journey was that we took a very agnostic approach, but then also too, we understood, and when I say we, again, I'm talking to my other coworker, Alex, with the group, is that we understood our ignorance about this, about the technology, and so one of the things was attending events like this, and also too, we just pretty much found all of the devices that we could get our hands on to test them out to see how do they work. So it was really educating ourselves on these devices, how they operate, what do they need to operate successfully, and then start to develop use cases around them. So then the idea was, okay, now I have these pair of glasses, they work in a particular factor or a manner. Who would use them within the company, and who would we take these to use in the company? And one of the things that we found is that there are going to be certain hardwares that work in better use cases than others. There are going to be some that are going to operate in an environment that you're going to want in one environment more so than you would want in another. So it might be your difference between your HMT RealWears versus your ODG R7s versus your Vuzix 300s or even your Epsons. So there is a lot of different, so we just wanted to make sure that we looked at all the types of different glasses. We then started looking at different use cases, and then we started seeing that certain hardware is preferred in certain use cases versus others. So, but we wanted to maintain pretty much an open aspect to dealing with it.
Great. So Zach, you're telling me Merck recently created a center of excellence to centralize some of the process around looking at AR and VR applications. Do you see this playing into how Merck can accelerate the adoption of technology by having this body of excellence?
Yeah, so it's absolutely going to make us get into production faster whenever we're using any kind of use case and trying to get that deployed. I want to take a step back and just explain a little bit about the Center of Excellence because it's different from most of the other Center of Excellences I've seen in the company. Usually they come from a top-down approach and it's intended to help everyone be compliant with the technology and use it the most appropriately. And because it's a heavily regulated industry, we want to make sure that if we're using new tech, that it's safe to use, and there's a lot of concerns with this, as well as this technology in particular. Virtual reality, augmented reality, initially it was thought about to be primarily associated to games. So there was a lot of initial pushback. So this Center of Excellence is different than other ones that I've worked in. This came from the bottom up. It was more people just being interested in the tech and talking with one another and starting to bring the technology in and getting people hands-on and using it and trying it out. And over time, that turned into a group of people meeting on more of a regular basis. Now we have a bi-weekly extended reality best practices meeting, and more people are coming every week. And it got to a critical mass point where it's no longer just people talking and sharing use cases. It's now more of a center of excellence, and we have to go that next step to get more involved in the regulations and making sure it's compliant and helping people when they come to us, come to people who are involved in this group, helping them go through all the hoops that we're figuring out. Because what was interesting when we very initially started meeting with each other is that everyone had started creating various use cases and executing them in little bubbles. People were working with different vendors or they were working with some internal teams, and a lot of times, I guess a few times there were teams who were working on very similar use cases and we could have leaned on each other. So we're already seeing a lot of value just by getting these people together and talking, by being transparent and opening the communication, just to lean on each other, to ask for feedback, to see what kind of technologies worked for you and what vendors worked best for this use case, for example. So eventually, as we continue to clarify how the Center of Excellence is going to work, and we're working on creating that demand management portal. So when somebody new wants to engage and figure out how to use this technology, they can come to us and we can navigate the route. We'll see value in that sense in the future. And right now, just through the transparency and communication, we're seeing a lot of value already. So yeah, it's already paying off, setting that up.
And all of you guys represent companies that have tens of thousands of employees. It's something we see happening in the market, and Rodney, tell me if I'm mistaken on this. You've essentially you and Alex have become the hotline at Duke, where if somebody's adopting this technology, they call you. How does that spread in a company? How's that awareness spread?
Well, it really comes from talking about it, really traveling road shows that we do within the company. So one of the things that we've done is we actually have a kit that we take to interested stakeholders or folks who should be interested in this technology, and we demonstrate what we found, what we know, and also to talk about what we don't know and why we're asking them for help or some input into our user group to develop some of this technology. So one of the things that's always important is just to socialize the information that we have gained, where we think we want to go and where we should go, and then actually we start bringing people along, kind of like in a bus mentality. We kind of start bringing people along the bus to help champion what we're doing and also to help inform what we're creating as well.
Mm-hmm. And just to add on, we did it very organically, where people initially were a little scared of the technology. So we created, for example, in Austin, we have an office here where we've installed a virtual reality lab. And the main intent was to get people hands-on with the technology and just feeling it out, even just playing games just to get used to it. Just to kind of demystify what this is, since a lot of people can't get their hands on it. So just getting word of mouth out and getting people to play with it and recognize what it is and what it can be used for helps people. Then when you start pitching the use case, then they can actually kind of relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think to build on that, to both what Zach and Rodney said, is some of the things we've done is, we started out with like an online suggestion box, and we failed miserably, right? So we got we got things like move a corporate office, or we didn't get what we really wanted, which was around how can we use technology. And so we started going out and having dialogue sessions with individual groups. We started to talk about, what are the pains you have? And then we started to look at what kind of technology can we bring in for those pains. And then that built into, lunch and learns across the entire company, both remote and on site. So we had Skype sessions with, 50 to 100 employees, as well as people in the office. And what we did with that is we actually created, we use a program called Spigot, and we actually created challenges around those lunch and learns where we actually said, okay, given that we're going to talk about wearables today, what are things that we could use wearables for at our plants? How can we help improve with wearables? So they got and listened to how could they be used, and then we got how people could see them being used in situations we may not have thought of, and that's been a lot more eye-opening. Really talking to people and doing it that way than before. So just waiting for people to come to you doesn't always work.
Yeah.
And I can add to that as well. So we've taken in our team member voice very seriously. So again, exoskeletons, not VR, but their experiences. So one of my plans put together this amazing video of all the team members who have been wearing exoskeletons in paint line, and just really hearing their feedback. They really have served as champions for the technology, listening to that. There's one team member who's amazing. He says, when I retire, I have no doubt that after wearing this device in my job, I'm going to be healthy. I am not going to be injured. So just listening to that powerful voice is very important, and for other team members to listen to the team member voices, very crucial as well to get your message out.
You don't find anyone taking the exoskeletons home saying, I was going to do some drywall work this weekend, and it spreads in the community beyond Toyota's plants?
Not yet. It may happen in the future.
Like, I've got an idea for my next project. So Chris, Marisol, we did a bunch of background planning on this, and the topic of people keeps coming up into the conversation, which, frankly, is heartening to know that we are thinking about the end user, their piece of it. But what we're finding is it's an incredibly important part of the adoption. You specifically said, hey, if you fire and forget this, it's not going to succeed. I'd actually like both of you guys to kind of jump in on this one. But when you think about people, you think about the way it transforms your company. I think you have a more successful company. How do you incorporate the team in the ultimate success of the adoption here? And maybe kick off with Marisol and then Chris.
I certainly talked about that feedback. I think something to be aware of is you don't just dump this technology into any organization. You have to have some systems in place first. So at Toyota, we have this concept of mendomi. It's a Japanese term, but basically it means caring for the employees or your team members the same way that you would care for your family. So it's family members and such. And part of that is a program that is at every single plant, so large assembly plants, small unit plants. It's called How's Your Process? And it's basically in the morning, the team leader, who's the first level shop floor management, will ask every team member, how's your process? And they have a board, and if they feel any type of discomfort, for example, whether it's personal or work related, it doesn't matter. So they'll mark an X on the board. And if they have nothing, well, it's circle, so you're good. So that process being in place was hugely critical for exoskeleton usage, right? Because you still have to address fit issues, discomfort issues, straps, it's too hot, that's not fitted correctly, I have the wrong support, my arms are up too much, I'm having tough time pushing them down. So that system was in place, and I think that was really critical for that. And I think that another part of it might be veering off the question, but just PPE in general. So again, that's the route that we're taking for exoskeletons. And we have very strong safety culture. Our team members understand that the personal protective equipment they're asked to wear is based on risk assessment. And the risk assessment is something that a lot of times they complete themselves. So I think it's not just, here you go, wear this because. It's wear this because there is a risk, same as safety glasses. If you're working on a process where something may enter your eye, it's a required piece of personal protective equipment. So I think having a lot of those systems and policies in place first is very crucial for this type of wearable rollout. At least it has been for our organization.
And Chris, your adoption of technologies for a slightly different purpose. It's not the insurance in case something was to fail, but it's really to take advantage of it in an all-day use.
Right.
How do you bring people into that?
So I was here last year on this stage with you, Brian, and one of the things I said was it takes more than me or my organization getting excited about technology. I have to have a business unit or a group of people that's excited. And so we started down that journey last year, really right after this meeting. And one of the things I said was that, that the technology side, the vendor side, has to be there the entire way with us. Mm-hmm. And if you just think you're going to throw us a technology, it's not going to work. Just like if I throw a technology at employees in my organization and I don't give them the reasons behind it, I don't get the buy-in from them, it's not going to work. And so where we were successful getting to where we are today is because we both found vendors that wanted to walk with us the entire way, sometimes at their own cost, to learn. And then we had people that were just dedicated. They saw the benefits and they were ready to run with it. So we spent 8 months in IT lockdown to be able to put these devices on the network, right? Something as innocuous as two-way video communication on a business network with confidential information in a highly regulated industry. 8 months seemed like pretty fast to me. In fact, we had people that thought we'd never get them approved. But it's because we had people that saw the benefits in our initial pilot when we didn't use the network and we sort of were off-site, and those people were what really drove the use of the technology. And that's what you really need. If you don't have those early adopters that are just engaged and pushing. So one of the employees of my organization, Vincent Williams here, can attest to, he did a lot of the work around this, is the people that were excited and dedicated are the people that push those roadblocks down. And if you don't have them, it doesn't matter. So just like if a company thinks they've got a great product, but they can't help you get there, if you have a great idea, you can't get anybody to accept it, you just can't drop it in their lap. And that's really a big key, is how do you continue to engage with them and empower them? And so, this month we had a refueling outage at one of our nuclear power plants, and we had these devices being used and adding value to the organization where we could actually do real video communication, what we call mobile merged reality, where we could actually interact with that while people were in the field. It was really powerful to hear some of the comments from those individuals. And I know just from the small group we had using that, I already got feedback from other groups that they're like, we need them for the next, we need them tomorrow. And so, building that grassroots thing was really important to us. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we're going to do is we're going to take people away from being in industrial situations where there's either higher fields of radiation or they're in an industrial environment like confined spaces that we have to put less people in because of this technology. So there's a safety piece to it too. It's not just the ease of everyday use, but we think it's really exciting technology. We want to look at more, what else can we do? So the exoskeletons are interesting. We do a lot of heavy lifting in our plants in an industrial environment, and how could those be? And same with AR, VR, how can we use that? So we're continuing to look for more of those opportunities. The hardest thing is we have a small group and there's a lot of technology out there. So picking the right one at the right time can be difficult.
Yeah, I'd like to just, one other thing to add to that is change management. Again, with your workforce. So with Duke Energy, we have especially in our lineman groups and with some of our in-field technician groups, it's an older workforce. So you want to create a more pull than a push. And what that means is that, we realize that in showing or introducing some of these folks to this new technology who's really never seen this before or never interfaced with this before, and it really counteracts with their normal way of doing their normal way of doing work for their 30 plus years of service. We have to create a different way of engaging those folks, and that's really been a lot of the learnings that we've had in demonstrating some of this technology, and then also learning from them and how we can change and incorporate this technology. And the other thing too is that it allows us to knowledge capture a lot of what those folks learn, because what we found is that when that 30-year lineman or that 40-year lineman retires, that's missed knowledge that we don't have an ability to hold on to in the company. So that's one of the things we're really excited about this technology, is being able to record and capture this technology for a future generation.
Great. So Chris, you mentioned that you're a veteran of the EWTS panel scene. Last year you did leave the audience with a pearl of wisdom. What would you say is the 2018 Chris Comfortism?
In an industrial enterprise, it's a long journey. So I alluded to the 8 months. So our network, Southern Company's 34,000 employees, our business network, there are 3 devices currently allowed on it besides our personal computers. That's an iPhone, an Amazon Echo, and the RealWear HMT1. That's it. And it took 8 months to get one there. So the wisdom I left last year was, as a vendor of a technology or software, you've got to be there and you've got to be engaged through the whole process. It's not just I've got a great thing and everyone's going to come running and it's going to adopt. But the other piece is there's a lot of work in between. So I can tell you that RealWear and our IT organization had to go through many layers of enterprise certificates and AirWatch and all kinds of things just to get that done, right? And I will tell you, at any time, RealWear could have stepped away, right, and we would have been done because it couldn't have been. We couldn't have done that on the device. So I want to extend that, right? It's a long journey. I will tell you that there were people. I'm not in IT, but there were people that said we'd never get it approved. In fact, they've gone down other paths of wearable technology, thinking they may get there faster. And at the end of the day, now they've all started to switch because now we have a device on the network. So. That, and then the other one, and Ronnie alluded to it, my demographic is 30 plus years in the industry, is the majority of our workforce, and they don't think that this is a technology that helps sometimes. Everything we've done it this way all of our lives, why would we change? And so finding those people in the organization that they can be 30-year veterans as well, but that are really excited about taking a technology. So in the case of our wearables, we had somebody who'd been with the company almost 20 years at the time that saw value in how it could help his workforce. And he was really the champion at one of our sites, and in fact, probably drove a lot of people crazy in IT trying to get to where we were and pushing for it. And so, I think you need a couple of things to really be successful, and I would expect everyone on the panel would probably agree, and that is you need people that are really engaged and excited and are gonna find value in this and communicate that value to others. Because if it just sits with them and you're the only one that's talking about it, it's not gonna go very far. You need to have partnerships with companies that are gonna help you get there, whether they're local, whether they're global, but that understand where you're trying to go and wanna help you get there. And then the last thing is you gotta have, to me, you have to have leadership high up in the organization that's willing to allow you to succeed, but allow you to fail as well. So, that can be tough, especially in a competitive environment some of the stuff we decide to go do is gonna fail. And how is that gonna be taken? Are you gonna be able to do your next job or your next technology idea because you just failed on this last one and you spent 6 months trying to do it? So, there were a couple times where we thought we weren't gonna get this approved. And now I got the other side of that, which is how do I get it to my organization fast and high quality and people can use it. So I don't know if there was one nugget in there or not.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, but it's a
For us,
relay
it
race,
is.
multiple players helping get it across the line.
Yes, for us, it's definitely been a marathon.
So I'd like to turn some question time over to the audience. I'm looking for Jeff and the microphone runners. Are you guys set? Perfect. Raise your hand if you'd like to ask the panel a question. Let's see.
Seth Lawley, Solar Turbines. I had a question directed at Marisol. I was kind of wondering, this is general, but if you and your organization as ergonomics fell under something more, not as specific, like say facilities or safety, do you think you could have accomplished this?
I'm sorry, what was if we had what, such as facilities and?
If you didn't have a specific organization, ergonomics specifically, and you're more of a general, we're the safety department or facilities, could you have accomplished what you're doing with the, helping the worker situations?
With the exoskeletons? Well, it's difficult to answer because safety is so ingrained. I think this has been our first go around with pushing team member enhanced comfort and injury reduction. So there are other facets of exoskeletons. So there's certainly studies that have shown quality improvements in tasks, productivity improvements. I think for us, it would be difficult to show that angle. For example, quality, difficult for us to use exoskeletons to improve quality. We have very specific takt time processes, right? Very repetitive, short cycle time jobs. So it would be a tough sell. It would be a tough sell to use the productivity route as well, because again, we have those very established short cycle time jobs, so it's not gonna shave off 3 seconds from my 60-second cycle time job for every single process. So I think if it would have been a very difficult sell if we weren't initially pursuing the safety and team member morale and comfort angle. I think those will eventually come into the picture, possibly, but it would have been very difficult.
Do we still have the second mic over?
Hopefully I answered your question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm with Gilbane Building Company. I just wanted to ask a little bit more about, you talked about your feedback board, and you talked about implementing a system and a system of policies. So coming from the construction side, every project is unique. So if we implement something new, you can't necessarily know just how many RFIs you didn't have because you did something new. So it's always hard to have that feedback on a case-by-case basis. So if you could talk a little bit more about how you pinpointed and established those protocols and procedures, that would be helpful, I guess, if that makes sense.
So protocols. So I think all of your tasks, you said construction, are possibly different, but I think you're always getting at the root of the issue, which is whatever they're doing, is there, how do you feel, essentially, right? So do you feel better wearing this as compared to not? So because the construction highly varied, it's not repetitive, right? You have less control.
Sure.
But again, that's really at the core of it. So is that team member feeling better? And I think you can look at developing tools and systems to really dig at that, and just really feedback in general. So subjective and just team member voice. At Toyota, we love numbers. If there's no number attached to it, it's meaningless sometimes. But a lot of times too, it's just a voice, and it's just subjective data that drives.
So was your question of trying to solve something came before deciding on the exoskeletons, or was it trying to solve a problem that you didn't already have a full picture of, I guess is my question.
So my role, I work a lot on reducing forces for our team members, improving postures. We're not as successful in tackling another big physical risk factor for these injuries is repetition and duration, so static, so doing something the same way, holding something up for a long time. It's difficult to address that typically because if anything, we want to build more cars, right? So we can never say slow down the line, right? So seeing exoskeletons right away for me was something, wow, even if I improve push force, posture, I still have this fatigue from this constant repetition. So, cycle time 55 seconds or something, doing the same thing over and over again. So that's where these things really come in to the picture for me. So I think they're going to improve over time, and I think we're going to have, better systems to address really whole body approach. Ultimately, that's hopefully
Yeah. Thank you.
Hopefully that's the future vision.
Okay.
Yeah, good morning. This is Jeff Knight from Lockheed Martin, and excellent diversification up here on the panel. I appreciate that. This is really for the panelists and overall. In our company, and I'm sure in yours as well, IT is a very fundamental process that must be very tightly organized. And with the concept of wearables, especially wireless wearables, in that environment, I'd like to pose to the panel, what kind of challenges have you met working with the IT environment and integrating wearable technology, especially from a standpoint of wireless in the factory and in other areas? Some of those thoughts.
Yeah, how about each person takes like your top one and we'll go down the line.
So for
It's
us,
a long list.
Yeah. So for us, one of the first things we've looked at, especially in evaluating wearables, is in the field. So how does that technician how would they use wearables in the field? And we've had to kind of change our use cases in understanding that communication path. So one of the things we've been looking at, so typically it's your wearables and then some path, Wi-Fi path, and then they communicate to the cloud, and then hopefully back into the corporate network, and then that's an IT challenge. For us, then it's that medium path is, well, what's going to be your Wi-Fi hotspot, or whether it be your cell phone? Does your technician have a cell phone? Will we be giving cell phones, smartphones to all of our technicians? Is that possible? One of the things we're now looking at is vehicular Wi-Fi. So technicians in the truck, and then being able to have that Wi-Fi that's on the corporate network, and then extending that out from the truck side. But again, looking at those different use cases, one of those is in a nuclear plant. And I believe in most of ours, there's no Wi-Fi signal inside some of those containment units or inside some of those plant units. So then how can we make the use of wearables still a great idea, but then have offline storage or offline usage of work aids and things like that, so that then when they are in an environment that is internet capable, then the glass is still fully functioned, that kind of thing. That's for us. That's been a couple of use cases that we have kind of seen around some of those challenges.
Yeah, well, I'll build on Rodney. So for us, in a nuclear plant, there's two big things: cybersecurity and what we call safeguards. So safeguards is the protection of security-related information such that a adverse entity cannot gain access to our plant. And so that's very protected, so is our cyber. So a couple of things we did. Our networks are separated, so they can't talk, our critical safety side with our business side. We don't store video on the cloud. So the solutions that we have to be able to do internal connection and video transfer only. So I talked about 8 months. 8 months was to make sure we had all those things in place. So if we want to add a new software package on one of these devices, we have to evaluate that software. So we can't just the device by itself isn't good enough. It's how does the software I'm going to use to take a picture and transfer it somewhere, take a video and connect to some other device. That all matters to us, and in the nuclear side a little bit more than, say, if I was in a fossil plant, I probably don't care what's going on at my turbine area, and so that video can go into the cloud, but I do when I'm at a nuclear plant because there may be a security station there that I don't need anyone to know about. So for us, it's those two. It's how do we ensure video stays and it's approved before it's ever released, and then also how do we make sure that stuff we're doing on the business side using those devices is not going to somehow impact the control of our plants.
Yeah, and I echo most of the things that you're saying. We have a variety of use cases. A lot of them don't need any of this extra, IT connections, because a lot of it's on board on the headset. The main one that comes to mind is when we're using the HoloLens in our manufacturing plants, where there's not necessarily a good Wi-Fi connection, and that was probably the first thing, was figuring out how do we get this internal to the network, making sure that we don't have any of those risks, as you mentioned, and then making it functional inside the plant in all the locations, making sure you don't have any dead zones or anything like that. But I'd say for the most part, the use cases that we're working with don't really require a lot of that, because it's just a standalone, trying to keep it as in the headset and as you can get.
I'll add on to it, since we hear a lot of feedback similar to what you would see at Lockheed Martin from a lot of different folks in the field. So there's
certificate management, like your MDM, that's a very important thing. I'd say the industry has largely solved that. Like different folks at different times crossed that milestone, but if you're just starting to adopt it, know that that's something that's solved in the industry. And depending on the type of data you deal with, like the hardware and the software that you put on top of it, we go through aggressive penetration testing with our software because of needs like that. That's something that you should definitely, I think, take a look at as to whether or not that satisfies your organizational needs, because we at least see very different organizational requirements based on what is the end work that's being done. If you're dealing with repair manuals that you can find online, that's not protected information. If you're building, I don't know, the next stealth aircraft, it's a whole different ballgame. Or if you're in our SCADA systems, it's a whole different ballgame. So make sure that you're finding like something that meets your criteria. But I think the industry's done a pretty good job over the last couple of years answering those questions. So there certainly are solutions that are out there for you. I got one more question and then a quick lightning round. All right, I got one in the back.
Yeah, hey, my name's Mark. I'm with Washburn Tech. This is a question for Mr. James. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but you were saying that you're using AR in the field. Could you expound a little bit more about how you are planning on using AR, if you guys have figured that part out yet?
Sure. So again, we're at the proof of concept pilot phase of that adoption. So again, we haven't outfitted 1,000 linemen or 1,000 technicians with this. These are just ideas that we want to have, and we're kind of shopping that around. One of the use cases is storm or damage assessment. So what you would have is if you're wearing a pair of glasses and you're evaluating a storm that's passed through, think of Florence, with a communication into pretty much our asset management and we have another software that we use that pretty much a lineman can use that tells where a pole is, a transformer, a recloser, all those things that kind of make up our grid, where they're supposed to be with GIS. So with Wearables, the idea is that I can look into a field or I can look into an area and say, okay, this pole was supposed to be here, but it looks like it's now 50 feet over here because of a storm. I can now generate a work order for a crew to come and fix that and bring that back up. Another idea is a technician being able to, if they go to a customer location, on all of our meters, there's some type of barcode information. They can read that barcode. Barcode would say, you are dealing with customer X. Here's the information from that customer, and then that would make sense. And so then in dealing with that customer, you can understand what their usage is, what's been going on, whether it be a commercial or residential customer. And then another one is using AR for a substation technician. They're interfacing with a SCL recloser, and they're not sure how to perform certain operations. Instead of taking a manual, they can use, the idea is that they can use the glasses that will go through steps on what to do step A, do step B, do step C, and then also, too, telling them, press this button. And again, in the AR, it actually highlights the button that they need to press to go and going through the steps and things like that. So those are some of the use cases that we've been working, that we've looked at in our head and that we're kind of like evaluating now.
All right, so we're to the end of the panel. So real quick, gut reaction, yes or no question, lightning round. Chris, next year, EWTS, if we wanted to, could be 100% virtual wearing Oculus.
I'm glad I'm first.
Yes, sir.
We're all wearing Oculus? No.
All right.
We won't be able to walk around.
Zach, by 2020, the best-selling consumer device is Apple's glasses. Ronnie, by 2025, more than half of all vehicles are produced by workers benefiting from either human or information augmentation.
2025?
2025.
No.
No. I thought I was going to get a yes.
He said yes.
Oh, I thought you said no. Yeah.
Yeah, I said
yes,
no.
perfect. I was like.
Oh, you said no. Okay.
No, I said no.
No.
Okay.
Marisol, Tom Brady wins his last Super Bowl at age 50 due to his exoskeleton helping him stay in the game.
Yes, and it's going to be wearable. It's going to be like the football uniform.
It doesn't bode
It's
well
going to look
for my
like that.
Steelers.
It's not going to be hard or anything. Yes.
All right, Chris, I'll change it. Next year, we need a bigger venue.